Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the Journey of My Brother's Son podcast. Today I'm joined with actor, author, and inventor Andy Paige. Andy, how you doing today?
I am so well, so happy to be with you. Thank you for inviting me on your journey.
Absolutely. Looking forward to the conversation. Before we get started, introduce yourself to the audience, in your own words. Who is Andy today?
Yeah, so, I am so fortunate. I've had a really big, exciting life. And currently, I am the latest cast member of General Hospital, which is my character's name is Pearl, and it's the longest running television show in television history. It's been on for 61 seasons. It's something I watched actually with my great grandmother. So I'm happy to say at 54, I have my very first acting job. So I am a character on General Hospital. I'm also a co-host on QVC, which is something I'm really proud of. I'm an author. I have a best-selling book that's been published in 14 countries in 3 languages. A lot of people know me from, reality television. I've done over 200 episodes of reality television. I was on a show called Starting Over for years. I'm a beauty and style expert. I do national radio every Monday that goes out to 140 markets. So I'm kind of a media person, if you will, but I'm also a mom and a wife and a carbon farmer.
I love it. Love it. So you got just a little bit on your plate, it sounds like.
Just a spoosh.
So, it's funny you talk about General Hospital and watching it with your great grandmother. I actually remember as a kid as well with my great grandmother watching General Hospital. I would spend a lot of summers with my grandparents, and my great grandmother lived with my grandparents at the time. And it's funny that you mentioned that because I have very, very fond memories of sitting and watching General Hospital with my great grandmother when I was a kid. So kind of neat that we have that in common. But tell me, how is that you've been in TV, been in radio, a lot of different media, but you mentioned you just landed your first, you know, acting job, which is, obviously different than reality TV. So, was that something that has always been on your radar, or, how did that come about?
No, I actually took one acting class in college. And the truth is, my professor was like, you're just not that good. And I was like, yeah. He's like, I think you really struggle saying words that, people want you to say. It seems like you're really entrenched in your own personality, which is very true. I have no problem taking a microphone and working a crowd of thousands or talking directly to the camera like I am now and just being myself. But being an actress is a very, very different thing. I was just in Los Angeles this past Wednesday, and you should know that my co-host on this particular storyline is Morgan Fairchild.
Very cool.
Let me say that again. Morgan, my first acting gig, and my co-host on the show is Morgan Fairchild. So it is very different. I never thought I would do it, but what happened is the producers of this particular storyline are producers that I worked with 20 years ago. So it's been a great lesson for my kids, my girls, to, I have always said that you don't eat the fruit the same day you plant the seed.
Yeah.
And this is a perfect example of that because the relationships that I built and the impression that I left 22 years ago with these particular two producers ended up, bringing to bear this particular role because the role is that of a home shopping host, which is something that I do in real life. And these producers who have been following me and, we've just kept up very generally over social media saw that I was now doing this. So when the role of a home shopping network host came available, they're like, we know exactly who to get. And they reached out and I was like, are you sure? And they're like, yes, you're going to be perfect for this. We needed somebody that looked completely different than Morgan, that was a little Southern. I mean, when they broke down the description of the role, I was like, well, yeah, that is kind of me. So it is wonderful. I mean, I am so grateful. It is incredible to be a part of this legacy show. But, in addition to be a part of this show, what I'm also doing is a real television marketing experiment. And this is exciting because I'll be honest with you, I think that if it works, it's going to kind of change the way that we all watch television.
Yeah. So, tell me a little bit more about that. What exactly, um, that is as far as a television marketing experience.
Yeah. So, we are all watching television in very different ways. Most of us are streaming it because we want to try to avoid the ads. And I can tell you, coming out of this political season, I have tried my best to avoid ads at all costs. I mean, we are all just watching television differently. But I mean, the truth is they call it a soap opera for a reason. And that's because, soap ultimately pays for the show. So because people are watching television differently, um, you know, ultimately marketers and advertisers are having to be, much more creative in how they, generate income. So how this was pitched to me is, what if you could have bought Fonzie's jacket? Or, what if you could have known, the hair products that Rachel and Monica, used on Friends? So what's basically happening is there is a 20-year storyline, and you probably aren't aware of this, but there's a storyline within General Hospital about deception, cosmetics, and makeup. And it's, this deception company is run by these amazing women who, are cutthroat and gorgeous. And the audience has been able to watch them develop products like a red light therapy wand and serums and makeup. And it's been very interesting and educational. And so they thought, well, what if we made deception cosmetics real? And so they started to license and started to make deception cosmetics real. And then they thought, okay, well, what about, the handbags and the clothes that the people wear, the jewelry, even like things on the wall. So what has happened is the things that you are experiencing within the show are now, when the licensing is done and it's ready, it is brought to Home and Heart, which is the fictional shopping network on General Hospital. I'm one of the hosts. So I talk about those products on Home and Heart, and then it goes to shophomeandheart.com to be sold to consumers and to people who watch the show and to people who want to be a part of the show and really support the show. So the theory is that if this works, then there will come a time when every show that you watch on television will be shoppable. You can shop things on the wall, things that they're wearing, things that they're products that they're using, and it will be a new consumer stream, a new revenue stream that will keep the shows basically alive.
Yeah, that's it really is genius. Like you said, talking about, the examples you gave as far as Friends and, Fonzie and stuff, it really is pretty ingenious to come up with that concept. Um,
Well, we take the fact that television is free kind of for granted. I mean, it's not free. Ultimately, watching the ads is what pays for it. So, this is just, like I say, one more revenue stream, but it's going to become a really important one as we do our best to avoid the ads.
yeah, 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 very interesting. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about, you mentioned a little bit when you were talking about how the role came about, but tell me what that adjustment was like for you. Going from like reality TV where it's kind of ad-libbing and, like you said, speaking live like this, and then having that script. I mean, what was that adjustment like for you to, you know, digest that?
I'm still digesting it. Let me just tell you. So, um, soap operas are unlike any other form, and I really am learning that. So, just to give you an example, my very first day on set, I was in scene 47 and 49 of the day, and that there were 56 scenes scheduled that day. And I can only tell you that that is absurd. I mean, to even think about trying to get through that many pages of dialogue and that many characters, I mean, it is insane. This is baptism by fire for sure. And, they create 250 hours of television a year, and they work in two blocks. You work from 5 a.m. to noon, and then from 1 to 8 at night. And they do that 4 days a week for the entire year. So it is really, really crazy. But there's a very big difference, and I have to give them a lot of credit. I was specifically told when I joined the show that, it was very time sensitive, and that you were basically given one recorded practice and one recorded take. And it was rare that they went to a third take. They tried their best not to do a third take. So let me just tell you, this past Wednesday, I had to do a third take because I'm still learning that, when you're on set, it's one thing, like I'm talking to you now, this is not a big deal. But when this is going to sound so sophomoric, but it's just true. But when you have to remember the dialogue and respond to someone and then look at this camera and then respond to someone else and look at another camera, it seems so simple. But when you're standing next to Morgan Fairchild, it is frightening. And I really screwed up bad. So I had to do the dreaded third take. But I am learning there's a lot more to it than, the TV that I had experienced before. Reality television is really about being entrenched in who you are and the character of who you are and, your personality. And, people are going to like you or love you. A third of the people are going to like you. A third of the people are going to hate you. And a third of the people aren't going to care. So, if you can get that one third that's on your side, then in television, you're doing pretty well. But in, scripted television, let me just tell you, the writers take it very, very seriously because these are Emmy-winning writers. And I kept screwing up the word new. I had to do a third take because I kept forgetting the word new. I was supposed to say new deception color instead of deception color. So new had to be in there. And so I am learning. But, that one class in college has not served me well. I will tell you, I left the set Wednesday and I immediately started to Google acting classes. So for all those who are watching who have no problem getting on the boards and saying that Andy Paige / Pearl stinks, I know, and I promise I'm going to get better.
I love it. So what was it like to, that first interaction with Morgan, kind of pinching yourself and, again, your first role and her resume of, miles long, what was that
Well,
like?
you are an American, like a red-blooded man. Let me ask you, what would you do if you came face to face with Morgan Fairchild?
I'd definitely be overwhelmed for sure. I've met my fair share of celebrities and, professional baseball players and stuff like that. And there's definitely always kind of that kid component, you all automatically go into fanboy mode, so to speak, so it's,
Totally. I mean, so I'm 54 years old, so I remember her on Falcon Crest, and I remember her being like this gorgeous, powerful woman. And then, of course, I mentioned Friends earlier. She was Chandler's mom, which is how my girls know her on Friends. And she's had these amazing, iconic roles. And, she was just a beauty and still is. I mean, she is almost 80. I'm not going to give it away, but she's almost 80 and she is there in like full glam, looking gorgeous in her heels, knowing her cues, and so impressive and so inspirational. So for me, someone who not only looks up to this show, but now looks up to this, beauty icon, it has been intimidating. And I was shaking in my boots. I never get nervous. I could feel like my heart racing in our first scene, like, so it's definitely been intimidating, but at the same time, she's so lovely, so lovely. And, I'm like, man, take a picture with you. And she's like, of course, please, So it's been wonderful. And again, it's a pinch me moment. I mean, I come from a very small town in Alabama. I'm from a small town called Chickasaw. And, I say barefooted until I was like 11. And, I would have never dreamed in a million years that my life would be what it is today. I am so grateful. God is so good. And this is just one of the things. But, you should know this about me. I am determined to live to be 100. So I want to live to be 100. So in my mind, I just continue to think, I'm only halfway done. So who knows? Bring it on, God. Let's see what's next.
Yeah, I love that. So a couple things I want to go back to that you'd spoken about. Number one was talking about how this connection you made, 20 years ago, kind of came full circle and led to where you are today. And I think there's a great lesson in that. And the other lesson that, I want to kind of dig into a little bit more is, again, you said you got your first acting role at 54, which goes to show you that it's never too late to kind of redefine yourself or step into something new. My mother actually went back to school in her mid 40s to become a drug and alcohol addictions counselor. So she was one of the ones who taught me that no matter what path you're on, you can always change that path and you can always step into a new role. So if you can kind of break those two components down a little bit about that full circle moment of, understanding, what every connection you make in life where you have no idea when that's going to circle back to you, and then, the ability to, at any age, step into a new role.
Yeah. So, I'm going to take it even further back. I mentioned I come from a small town. I'm actually a high school dropout. So I dropped out of high school at age 17, and I was told I could model, which was crazy to even think about. I mean, I had never even been told I was pretty, but because I was tall and skinny, I was afforded this opportunity, and I was like, yeah, I'm doing that. So I got my GED, and I moved to New York like literally a deer in headlights. But what I had on my side was a great, strong upbringing. So I mentioned my grandparents. I went to a small Catholic school. There was literally, I don't even think there were 200 students in the entire school. There was a lot of churching in my life. And I was at Catholic school and in a Catholic church for 5 days a week. And then I was in a Baptist church at least 2 or 3 days a week. So I had a lot of churching. And I left for New York at 17, believing that God was my bud and that, he was going to protect me and I was going to walk in faith. And I just believed I was going to be okay. I don't know why. I just believed that if I walked in faith, that I was going to be okay. And I sit here today as someone who I've still never done a drug in my life. I kept my nose really clean. And what I was taught was that no matter the situation, you want to show up on time, prepared, your absolute best self, and you want to try to make every situation a little better than how than you found it. And those are the seeds that ultimately I have planted my entire life. And as a result, I'm in my 50s and I continue to see the results of that. You leave an impression with someone when you make their life easier and not harder. And that is always my goal, is to try and make something a little easier, to be nice and to be known as someone who's going to pitch in. There's no job too small. I mean, if I showed up at any job and they asked me to go get coffee or to scrub a toilet, I'll do it. If that's going to make your life easier, no problem. I'm happy to do that. I'm not offended. I don't think you're doing that because I'm a girl. I don't think you're doing that because I'm an idiot. I think that you believe that you can trust me to do something, so I'm going to do it. And that might be naive, but that is honestly how I have approached it. So no matter the circumstances in my life, I have always been someone who's willing to help. And I definitely think that has paid off. I mean, there are lots of women who would look at me and tell me that that's wrong and that I have not, stood up for women and, all the value that I bring to a situation. But I just think that one of the undervalued things that I can bring to a situation is help. And so as a result, I definitely believe that those seeds have been planted and it has given me a very fruitful life because people recognize that I am going to come with my full self and I'm going to help. So those are the seeds. And I'm so glad that my daughters are seeing that. Don't get me wrong. There's been sexual harassment in my past. There have been situations that were uncomfortable. I have never let those prevent me. I mean, I've stopped them. If someone was sexually harassing me, I would just be like, I can handle this. No, that's very kind. And then I remove myself from that situation. But for the most part, I have walked in strength and faith and with the belief that I'm going to just do my best. Let's put it that way, And so I definitely think that has given me the big, broad, exciting life that I have led. That's my true belief. And there are a lot of feminists who would not be in agreement with me, but that has been my experience.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think it's, those are, when situations come up, you can either choose to be the victim in it, or you can choose to take charge of it and control it. And I think that's a huge difference. There's way too many people in the world who just want to play that victim role, and I don't really see the productivity in that for sure.
I agree. And it's just like you say, you can change your path. You have the ability to, and right now we have more information than we have ever had access to in the history of human man. So there is really no reason for us to be quite so stuck and so immobile in how we want to design our life. I mean, there is of course, we all have tragedy. I can offer you lots of tragedy in my life. But when I sit down and I really observe all that's in front of me, my blessings far outweigh all of the tragedy. And I am not going to let the blessings overshadow the negative. So that's another approach that I kind of have to life in general.
Yeah. And again, I think that's a great approach because, um, what's the saying? You can't control the music that life plays for you, but you can control the way you dance to it,
Oh, I
and
love that. I've never heard that.
um,
That's awesome.
yeah, so it's just like you said, bad things happen to everyone. It's just the
Did your
way it
mom
is.
teach you that?
No, actually, my sister-in-law has it hanging on her wall. So,
Oh,
but my mom definitely taught me a lot to do with that same saying, so to speak. So it definitely resonated with me for sure when I saw it on their wall. But it's so true, I mean, bad things happen, and it's just a matter. And again, coming from a sports background and, coaching for 30 years, that was one of the things I always taught was, look, you can't control what the umpire is going to do. You can't control what your opponent's going to do. You can control what you do and how you react to, those other things that you can't control. So you always want to focus on what you can control and, move forward from there. So, let's shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about your book. And again, fellow authors here, so I always love, kind of sharing author stories. So tell me a little bit about how you know, the book came to life and what you were looking to accomplish by, publishing it.
yeah. So my book is called Style on a Shoestring. And, I go back to my upbringing. So my grandparents really believed that no matter, what level we were with regards to our means, if I presented well, or if we as a family presented well, that, um, it ultimately would dictate how people treated you. And so I was definitely taught that, how you show up is ultimately really going to define you in the public eye. So my grandmother was a master sewer, and I could literally pull anything out of a magazine and be like, Mama, I really love this dress. And she could create it for me. So I learned how to basically get dressed on a budget at a very young age. Like we never went to the mall. My grandmother made everything. We would go to the fabric store at the mall. But so then moving to New York at 17 and being thrust in this, high fashion world where you are surrounded by gorgeous things that come with a very high price tag.
Yeah.
And all very high. And, I recognize the craftsmanship and the beauty and the artistry of a lot of clothes. But the truth of the matter is I learned how to kind of fool the eye, if you will, and mix, thrift items with homemade items and hand sewn items and, secondhand things. And I wanted to be able to navigate this world comfortably and not feel less than and not be perceived as, the poor barefoot girl from Alabama. So I really honed these skills. And so when I got my first television job, on starting over, and I became the beauty and style expert on that show. It was really because of all of the skills that I brought in teaching women how to look like a million without spending a fortune, and how to add things and take away things because a lot of people overdo it. But it was those skills that I brought to the television show that seemed at that time, and we're talking almost 25 years ago, it was revolutionary at the time. It was an approach that people had not really heard of because at that time, everyone was just consumed with the latest trends and designers dictated style. And we looked to Vogue magazine for everything. And there wasn't really anyone explaining how you could do this for less. So I set out to put all of my style tips and, how I believed we could look great and my formula for that. So through my television work on Starting Over, and then I had another show that I did for years called 10 Years Younger, which was a show where I taught women how to look 10 years younger. So my book is a culmination of all of my tips and tricks that I discovered and was able to pull together through makeover television, which was something I was a part of for over a decade.
Yeah, it's very cool. And I think, you know, society views age differently for men and women, for sure.
You think?
So Yeah, just a little bit. Um, so, just talk a little bit about that, again, especially
Yeah.
in show business, and the fact that you are, again, working with Morgan, who, is in her golden years, had entering into her golden years, and doing it gracefully. I mean, just you know, what's that like? Kind of that double standard,
I honestly appreciate you asking. You should know that, I'm on a podcast tour. I'm doing lots of podcasts. No one has asked me that question. So I am actually very grateful that you'd ask. Um, there are lots of women who resent the fact that we have to fight so hard to maintain our youth, because ultimately our youth, it solidifies our relevance. I actually don't mind the fight. I was raised this way. I mean, if I were to pull in my 98-year-old grandmother, who raised me, you would see that she has fire red hair, purple glasses, and she probably wouldn't get on camera without lipstick. So it was, something that was instilled in me. I can remember my grandmother telling me that she always promised my grandfather that he would never see a gray hair on her head. So it was something that my grandmother always wanted to seem youthful and vibrant and attractive to my grandfather. And she set that example for me for sure. So when it comes to this business, I don't look at it as something that I resent or that I hate. I actually, whether I was on television or not, I would be someone who, takes the gray out of my hair and make sure that I've got my lashes on and I wear lipstick. And, so that is innately who I am. However, I personally believe that the thing that affects our relevance in any job is not so much how we look, it's the curiosity that we bring to it. As I have a business myself and I have employees, and I'm always looking to hire. And whether you are, a Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, it doesn't matter. The minute that you make me feel as if you know everything, is the minute that I'm ready to move on. Because I believe that it is the curiosity that we bring to every job and every situation. And I look to people with wonder, and I look to people with the desire for them to teach me and to show me how better I can do things. I in no way think I know everything. I in no way think that there is not something fabulous coming down the pipeline that I can learn from. And so, yeah, it is hard to think of, the visual as being so important. It's not hard for me. I know it's hard for a lot of women. I would do it naturally. But just to kind of spin that around, I do think what ages us is thinking we know everything.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's you know, so important. I mean, I go back again to my coaching days, where some of our younger coaches, we'd go to coaches clinics and stuff, and they'd say to me like, "Oh, you've been coaching 25 years, 30 years, whatever the case. Why are you, still going to these clinics?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know at all. We're still learning. It's all an evolution for sure." So yeah, I think definitely, continuing to be open to learn and understand, and just even to be willing to look at other people's perspectives, not even learning so much, but just be willing to accept other perspectives, I think goes a long way. And for me, I just think positive thoughts goes a really long way in keeping us young and keeping us healthy, so much more than negative thoughts. So I love that you kind of point that out.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I mean, I think there's so much, like I said, we have so much to be grateful for. We are living in the best time in like human history. We have so many, like, we have hot water and hot homes and beautiful cars and like comfortable beds. And we have so much to be grateful for. This really is the best time in the world's history in many respects. So there's so much to be positive about. And so that's actually why I stopped watching the news like almost 5 years ago. I did. I don't allow the news in my house. I just think that there's such a focus on all that we should be worried about and concerned. And I'm like, oh no, it's so contentious. So I'm a positive person, and I can tell you are too. I think that's really good. I'm sure your listeners listen to you for that exact reason, because you look for inspiration and people that you can connect with on the happy things. I mean, there's nothing worse than commiserating. I actually hate the word. Okay, great. We can, bond together through this experience, but come on, like let's lift each other up. Let's lift each other up.
Yeah, I love that. And truly you do find what you're looking for. So if you're looking for negativity and division and, you know, constant aggression, you're going to find it. And if you're looking for good people and, people who are really genuinely, concerned about the same things that you're concerned about, you're going to find them. And that's one of the things we've learned, traveling as much as we do, is that there are so many good people in this world, yeah, we're in a crazy polarized world, but like you said, don't focus on that. Don't focus on that. And way too many people decide they want to focus on that and focus on the negative opposed to, focusing on the positive and the good in people. So yeah, I think that's important. So, so what are some of your, you know, other secrets, so to speak, to staying young?
Mm. Well, I'll be perfectly honest. I probably take more vitamins than I mean. I take so many vitamins. I take the other thing that I've been doing recently is NAD. I've read all this research on NAD, so I've been doing that. I do a lot of red light therapy. I think that red light therapy is good for your joints. It's good for collagen production. So I mean, I know you'd like to think that I was going to say like exercise and eating right. Well, that's a given, but actually, it's not so much a given, to be honest with you, because I love Reese's peanut butter cups. I love them so much.
Yeah,
They make
guilty
me
as
so
charged
happy.
here too.
Yeah, I love them. So it is like so hard for me not to go a day without eating one. I have to be 100% honest. I love them. So I don't, I mean, I do, I try my best to eat right, blah, blah, blah. But, I also take a lot of vitamins, and I do red light therapy. I definitely believe in red light therapy. Do you know about red light therapy?
No, tell me a little bit more about that. I mean, I'm with you as far as taking the vitamins, but I wanted to dig more into what the red light therapy is all about.
Well, they're coming up with all of these things that it helps. So red lights and blue lights and orange lights, all of these lights penetrate the epidermis in different ways, but they're discovering that red light therapy actually can grow your hair. It helps your joints. It definitely boosts collagen. I mean, I just this past weekend I did a General Hospital event in Memphis, Tennessee, and Deception Beauty has a red light therapy one. So I was talking to this woman who, looked amazing, and I was followed by a camera crew this past weekend. And so I was like, "Well, you look amazing. What do you do?" She goes, "I actually have a red light therapy bed in my house." And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" She said, "No, I lay in it for 20 to 30 minutes every day, and I've only been doing it for 6 months." And she was 60 years old, and I cannot even tell you. Like, I was like, "You have got to be kidding me." And I have been doing more and more research about red light therapy, but it definitely helps with skin. It definitely helps with joints. There is all of this research that it's been around for a couple of decades, but it's really starting to be something that people are highlighting. So that's one of the kind of crazy woo-woo things that I do a lot of is red light therapy.
Yeah, very interesting. How does that affect your collagen? Because my wife actually takes collagen every day. She puts it in her coffee,
Yeah.
and I mean she looks 20 years younger than what she is. Um,
Yeah.
but you know,
So the red light actually penetrates the skin, and it goes in and it basically stimulates collagen production. So it especially helps with dark spots and wrinkles and lines. I see the difference, and I had never thought that it could help with joints or anything else. But basically, it's cellular. It is helping regenerate cells. So you think about, okay, well, what does that mean? That means cells in hair growth. That means cells in your bones and muscles, and it's just cellular regeneration, especially facial and collagen. So, yeah, I'm kind of a believer.
interesting, very interesting. So before we wrap things up, let's shift gears a little bit about and talk a little bit about your podcast. You're also a podcast host. With everything else on your plate, like what made you decide to throw on a podcast as well?
I'm so glad you asked. Now, you should know that I have not launched my podcast yet. I have recorded several episodes and I haven't launched it yet because I don't think that I have gotten to like the one that I want to launch with. So my podcast is called The Dating Lab with the Hillbilly Yenta. And my husband actually calls me the Hillbilly Yenta. You should know he's a Boston blue blood. And he believes that, my interest in love is like a little awkward, but I just think that dating is very different than when you and I did it. And I have three daughters. And so I tend to follow my curiosities. And I have been so curious about the state of dating and what is going on and what's happening to men and women. And we're in our second generation now of people who are more comfortable in a virtual world than they are really kind of in reality. And that is really affecting dating. People are ghosting each other and not showing up to dates and misrepresenting themselves. And it's almost like a game, and when they're uncomfortable, they just kind of hit game over and, you just leave people hanging. And so I have been doing a lot of research on dating, where we are in dating. I mean, did you know that the top 10 dating apps are all owned by one hedge fund?
No, it doesn't surprise me, but I did not know that because honestly, I've never had a dating app. I've, thank God
Right,
I've been in a great relationship for
right.
35 years, going on 36, and I couldn't even imagine what dating is like today. I mean, I know some of our kids and stuff, or grandkids and just friends, younger friends, some of my old players talk about dating apps. I'm just like, man, it's just such a completely different world to me. Like, I personally want no parts of it.
It is different. And, you should know that it's 70-30. There's 70% men, 30% women on the app.
Yeah.
And that's because they know that men really have FOMO, the fear of missing out. So they keep them hooked. It's not about finding the love of your life. It's finding, how they can get another $30 out of you every month. So I've really been doing a deep dive and doing a lot of investigating and interviewing a lot of people. And it's so funny that you talk about commiserate. I mean, this is something that people can like go into a spiral on. So one of the reasons why I haven't actually launched my podcast yet is because so many times I will think I've got a great guest and all they do is end up complaining to me for 30 minutes. And I'm like, who wants to listen to that? So when I feel like I have got like a really, really good core, then I am going to launch. But I have been actively, being both a host and a guest, but being the host of the Dating Lab with the Hillbilly Yenta. And I hope to launch that. But I definitely don't want it to be, just another complaint platform. I want to offer I want to be a real source of help and inspiration and solution.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And then one last thing we didn't talk about. I mean, there's a lot we didn't talk about, but you're also an inventor. So let's talk a little bit
Oh,
about
yeah.
your invention, your product you have out there.
Well, let me ask you, have you ever had an idea for an invention?
Trying to think. I mean, probably, nothing specific that I can really think about, other than seeing something and being like, boy, I wish I would have thought of that.
I know, right? I could have done that. I could have done that. So, well, I love to ask that question because most of the time people do. They have thought of something. Uh, so for me, but coming from a reality television background, I invented a product called the Girly Go Garter. And the Girly Go Garter is a hands-free purse that you wear on your leg. I patented the application, the gripper, basically, that adheres it to your leg. It works with the heat of your body, and it will carry up to 3 pounds. Now, its original intention was to carry a mic pack, a transmitter, because in reality television, there's not really a union for reality television, so it's easy for you to be on camera 16, 18 hours. And they always put that transmitter, they hang it on your bra as a woman. And, 6 weeks, 16 hours a day, I started to get water blisters on the back because it gets hot, that transmitter, right? It's,
Yeah.
it's transmitting. So I started to ask, audio, I was like, is there something I can wear on my leg? And everything that they gave me for my leg would fall down the minute I got hot and sweaty or moved too much. So I felt like there was something to that. And I started working with it. And In 2009, I was about 5 days away from heading to Los Angeles to start the next season of 10 Years Younger. I actually was cliff diving and I cut off my right foot. I completely severed my right foot, which was very traumatic. I say it with ease now, 7 surgeries and full, rehabilitation later. But from the hospital bed, I was like having it out with God. I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, I am a good girl. I have always done what was right. You cut off my foot. Like, this is a very, very big deal. And I just got quiet in my, drug-induced haze. And I had this message from God that was very clear that I didn't know if I'd walk again, but I needed to move forward with my invention. And so from the hospital bed, literally within 2 weeks of cutting off my foot, I was in the hospital for, over a month and lots of surgeries and all that. I started working on the Girly Go Garter, and I raised money and I launched my product 2 years after my foot was cut off. And I actually went to Asia on crutches to try and, find help, because at that time there was really no one in the US who could help me with the gripper. So again, I just followed leads. I, went down every rabbit hole. I was curious, and I figured it out, and I brought it to market. And before COVID, we were in about a little over 6,000 stores. Post COVID, we've had a very, very difficult time. We lost our manufacturing. It's been a struggle. But if I look at it, I am patented in multiple countries. It's now being used for medical devices. We're the #1 product for insulin pumps. We do a huge business with studio services as mic pack transmitter holder. We are great for weddings and proms, and so I just followed my instinct again and where God would lead me. And I know that my product is helping women worldwide, which is a huge blessing and accomplishment.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. So, man, Annie, we've talked about all kinds of stuff, but is there anything that you think we missed that would be important to the listeners before we wrap things up?
Oh, well, I appreciate you letting me come on and just talk about my life and, my role on General Hospital. It's been such a pleasure. But I'm hoping that we're leaving your listeners with a little inspiration of kindness and, that they are inspired to get out and live their best life and really think bigger than you ever thought before.
Yeah, I love that. So, Andy, if anybody wants to find you on the internet, how can they track you down, connect with you, and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, you can find me at andypaige.com. I do spell my name with a Y, which is an ode to all of the men in my life. So it's ANDYPAIGE. So andypaige.com. You can go to girlygogarter.com. And I encourage people to go to shophomeandheart.com, where they'll see all of these amazing products that's being generated by General Hospital as well.
Very cool. I'll make sure to put all those sites in the show notes as well, so people just kind of click on them and get there. So, and that brings us to our final question. As you know, the subtitle of the podcast is "Many Little People in Many Little Places," which comes from the opening lyrics of the Michael Franti song "Gloria," which go, "When many little people in many little places do many little things, and the whole world changes." What's one of the little things that Andy does on a daily basis to make the world a little bit better place?
I am kind. I make it a point to be kind every single day, no matter. And let me tell you, I live in the Northeast, where sometimes the term cranky Yankee has true meaning here. But no matter how you are to me, I am going to be kind to you. And usually I can break you. Like, you can spit it at me, but I can break you with my kindness. And I penetrate everybody with my kindness. So that is my superpower. I believe in it. I teach it. And I do my best to walk as an example of kindness.
I love that. Kill them with kindness. I love it. Absolutely. Andy, I really appreciate you taking the time. This is a blast talking to you and just kind of understanding everything you've got going on. Like I said, I can't imagine, how full your plate is. And, so to carve out, 45 minutes to an hour to sit down and talk with me, I really appreciate that for sure. So everybody else out there listening, be sure to check out my other podcasts and blogs at journeymymotherson.com. While you're there, please take some time and check out our Pay It Forward program, where you can buy a copy of one of my books, and we will drop it off and donate it to somebody along our travels. So once again, Andy, I really appreciate the time. This is a great conversation.
I loved it too. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
You bet.